Are you still treating your F&I department like a paperwork closet? Most powersports dealerships have no idea how much money they're leaving on the table when it comes to finance and insurance. In fact, some don't even see F&I as a revenue stream, let alone a high margin one. But in this episode, we are sitting down with Derek Sanders in this throwback episode, one of the most respected F&I trainers in the business, to show you just how smart moves can turn your finance office into a profit machine. Derek breaks down all of it. Number one, why the average dealership is 20 years behind. Number two, what the best stores are doing to hit over $1,500 per copy. Number three, why pre-approval and total care packages are gold. And finally, how to build a buying experience that actually builds trust. If you've ever wondered how to increase your back-end profit without being shady, this episode is your blueprint. You'll walk away with real-world scripts, structure ideas, and simple shifts that make a massive difference in your bottom line. And here's the kicker. If you're not doing this, your competitor already is. So stop leaving cash on the table, tap into this one now, and don't forget to subscribe. Let's get into it.
What are your initial thoughts on how dealers are doing in their finance departments?
Well, my initial thoughts are, don't feel bad because you are in the boat with about 80% of dealerships out there and owners. They just don't know. And what's interesting to me is that the auto industry is probably, I'd say 20, 25 years ahead of power sports, marine, RV. And in this particular department of the dealership, they might be even further ahead. I still have dealerships today that don't look at it as a revenue producer. They look at it as a necessary evil. So if that tells you anything, there's a lot of money being left on the table. And for me, it's an easy fix because it's one of the most glaring, obvious areas of opportunity in a dealership when you go in. And it all goes back down to process. So yeah, there's a lot of easy fixes. One of them is just identifying that this is an area of huge revenue, and it's basically you printing your own money. So we can talk about any avenue of that. Just to begin, this is an area that if you're looking at 20 groups observations of dealerships, one of the things they like to do is break up your dealership into AI, which is available income, and revenue producing, people in the dealership, as well as square footage of revenue producing dealerships. So they'll break it down to how much revenue does the parts department bring in, and what square footage is that. They'll break it down to how many people do you have in certain sales department and how much money are they bringing into the table. And one of the easiest, fastest, best, most producer is the F&I office. It's a small little office. There's no overhead. It's literally paper that you're selling. And there's one person typically that handles the business, whether you're doing 400 units or 1,000 units a year. Typically, any dealership at 1,000 will have two business managers, but under one business manager. So if you can think about it, the ability to produce a great amount of income in a small square footage with one person, it's huge. And so honestly, that's one of the biggest, easiest areas to make money in the dealership. And until you realize that, you're just pissing away money.
Is there, other than to say, here's a process you could follow, is there other hurdles that stop dealerships from doing that work? Like I imagine, is it a philosophical sort of approach where a dealership might say, well, we don't believe in those products, so we don't try to push those on the customers. I mean, I know that could be a big barrier, just like any other product that might be, whether it's insurance based or, it's not directly a value, a tangible value you may actually realize. Is that part of a hang up that you think holds people back, or is it just not knowing?
Well, that's a great question. And for out of that 80%, probably half of the dealerships are that. They look at the F&I office as the evil car, put them in the box, club them like a baby seal tactic. So they don't feel comfortable about selling their product or that product to a customer because internally they don't believe in it. So a lot of dealers fall prey to this. They think that however they feel as a consumer, everybody else feels. And I call that the 1% rule. And I preach never to follow the 1% rule because you are not like everybody else in the consumer land. So a lot of guys get caught up on, oh man, that's just trickery and greasy sales car sales tactics, so they just object to it. And there's another percentage of it that's just, I have X OEM, and X OEM doesn't have financing. So if you look at the big three, probably Harley-Davidson, Honda, and Yamaha have excellent financing for their customers. So if I'm not one of those three dealers, financing might be a real problem for me to get people financed. And on top of that, to get them financed with enough money to include these ancillary products on the back end. So that's another deterrent if they aren't aggressive enough to go look out for, say, credit unions or alternative forms of financing. That might be the second half of our 80% is just people who aren't a major player with OEM that has their own financing. So it's a multitude of things. It's got burned in the past by a greasy, douchey finance manager who wrote a bunch of paper, not on the level, so to speak, and then all of a sudden they got their hand slapped by the powers that be that says, hey, you're doing things shady, or they had a red flag incident where the state or the county or whoever came in and audited and said, hey, you're not doing things right. But primarily, I think people fall into those two categories. One, they think it's shady. Two, they just don't have the proper OEM. But all in all, it really comes down to the process, and people don't understand this process.
Is that other than meeting with somebody like you and hammering out a plan to move to something from what they're doing now, what are some of the basics on a move like that?
Well, there's several things. First of all, the overall, you have to examine your process, your sales process, because within that's what is the catalyst for setting your F&I office or your business office up for success, is having them included in the process, whether it's let's just call it type A, which I like the best, where we give a range where you go out to the customer at the desk in the dealership sitting, or the high top table, which a lot of people are going to. So you're sitting in and around all the machines. So you're smelling the gasoline, you're looking at the shiny paint, you're like, oh yeah, this is awesome, it's intoxicating. And you bring the manager out instead of having the sales guy run back and forth like a little dog like they do in the car industry. You actually bring out the manager, make him get involved up front, because at the end of the day, who would you rather have throwing bombs in the end zone, Aaron Rodgers or the fourth string quarterback? Of course, it's Aaron Rodgers. That's why you pay him the big bucks. So why would you then not have your sales manager come sit down with your customer and say, hey, look, this is what I got you. One of the things I have found most successful is by coming out with a pre-approval, in air quotes here. And basically, you're going to get an idea of this guy's credit worthiness, because sales guy's done a good job and he's brought back a credit application, or what I call a customer statement, which sounds less scary to your customers. Yeah. They don't like to hear credit app, but they don't know what a customer statement is. So you bring your customer statement back, your sales manager pulls him, he's a 670, you know he can get bought, so you pencil up a good deal while your business manager throws them into Yamaha or Honda or whoever and gets a real number, and you go out and, hey man, look, congratulations, I talked to Gina over at the bank, air quotes, and she's got you pre-approved. This is what you're looking at. Basically, it's going to be this tax, title, license, everything, this much down, this much a month. And she said you could be approved for our VIP or total care package, which includes, 3-year extended warranty, tire wheel, guaranteed asset protection, and all of your maintenance is included, and that would be at this price. So basically give them a range, $225, $375, and they can make their decision. But you've exposed them to this product out in the fun area where it's still safe. You're basically in the herd of gazelles. You're not singled out yet in the office getting ready to get pounced on by the cheetah. And so at this point they can say, yeah, I love it, or no, I hate it. And then you say, well, let me go talk to Gina, air quotes again. And you go back and you structure up a deal that makes more sense, basically, because you went out on a fact-finding mission and it wasn't as scary. Put them in the box, close the door, and slam dunk them. So that type is my favorite scenario, type A. Type B is where the guy just sells the unit. The sales guy is just in charge of selling the unit. And once the unit's sold, basically the F&I manager, business manager, has been notified, hey, listen, I got Joe customer. He's looking at using this credit union, but he's agreed on the numbers. And then the business manager comes out and starts talking about, hey, most credit unions don't care what you buy, but we have motorcycle money here. So use your credit union money for that F-150 you said you drove, because the transmission's going to go out. And we don't have transmission money here. We have motorcycle money. So leave credit union money for transmissions, use our motorcycle money. And he talks about, do you have warranty on your car? Do you have this? What's the last bike you have? He builds a relationship, but also starts finding out about his buying habits. What has this guy done in the past? can I use any of this information when he's sitting across from me and I have my menu presenting him and telling him, remember when you said you're going to drive this thing till the wheels fell off? That's why this makes sense. So do you understand it's a fact-finding mission, but it's also a relationship-building mission before they get singled off from the herd and they get sent back, bloody and bludgeoned or sometimes dead. And they don't want that. They want to feel safe and secure.
So in the process, right, there's all this imagining of what my credit should be good. I'm in a good position. We're good debt, credit to debt or whatever, in their mind, whatever sort of picture they've painted, but they're really still unsure, right? Until that moment. If that's what the dealership is there, they've just put a big old check mark into that area that was an uncertainty. And am I becoming an owner? Am I taking ownership of this thing I want? That's got to be a pretty killer time. And at that point, right, it's, if the guy was serious, you've got him engaged, right? If the guy somehow is a fight or flight, he's going to flight, then I don't know, is he going to make up an excuse? But at that point, I don't think they ever could. He'd be too invested in that, wouldn't he?
Right. And that's another part of the sales process. Like some people will get this guy, they train their sales staff to, hey, pre-qualify this guy. I don't really care to pre-qualify people. I like to show them how easy it is to own one, assuming that they're going to buy one, even if it's not today. I'm not going to be high pressure on you. I mean, eventually you're going to buy one, right, sir? I mean, you are a man, and us men, we get what we want. So let me at least show you. What we can do. And when it's time, you'll know all the numbers and significance. And so I teach people, listen, just go through the whole motion. Show them how easy it is to own one. Yes, you will get some people pushing back saying, oh, I don't want to ruin my credit, which is a farce. Nobody has ever had their credit ruined because they got one pull from a dealership. That just doesn't happen unless their credit was already complete shite anyway. That's never going to happen. So we teach our guys to say, listen, that's a common misconception. This isn't a car dealership. We don't shoot you out to 20 places looking for the best return. We have a quote unquote on-site underwriter. And this is interesting to me because I ask my team every time I'm doing training, like, does anybody know what an underwriter is? You'll always have a couple guys raise their hand. Okay, what is it? Oh, well, isn't it a guy that does mortgages? No, somebody who determines credit worthiness. So what does your business manager do at your dealership? He pulls somebody's credit. He determines credit worthiness. So I like to use the term underwriter. We have an on-site underwriter. So we're not going to shoot you out to 20 places. We're going to use our on-site underwriter to find out the best place to send you and get you pre-approved. So it drops the guard down. Does it work every time? No, it's sales. Nothing works every time. But it lets your customer know, hey, we're not doing business like everybody else does. So we're going to really handle this with delicacy. We're going to make sure that you get the best scenario. And so then we keep moving through the process. And at the end of the day, what happens? You get a guy and you sit down with him and you show him, hey, all your maintenances are taken care of. All of this is happening. You got the total care package. And most dealerships aren't doing that. So if they've been anywhere else, they go, oh, all they wanted to do was grind me on the price. And you guys are showing me all this. Wow. And I'm pre-approved. This sounds easy. So it tends to lend itself to be a much better buying experience. And that's what I'm all about. Creating a better buying experience gives you more opportunities and better referrals. So when we do it like this, you make more money too, because you're presenting it all up front. When you're safe, in the oasis, in the Sierra with all the other gazelles and nothing scary.
It's, through the years, that's one point that I've always heard, and I still think it's funny if someone doesn't do that, and it's the concept that the earlier in the process that these things are talked about and at least brought up, the better likelihood of it, engagement on it and it happening. Obviously the process, like you're saying, has got to be right, and how it's done and who's doing it. They got to have that dialed in, not looking haphazard. But I've always heard that, and it's not just F&I over here. It might be like, if you're the whatever you work at, what's the name of a Best Buy or something, if the Best Buy sales folks, are going to get you to buy the extended warranty or whatever it's called nowadays on your, $3,000 or $5,000 television, the earlier in the process that value is at least laid out, they've said it's a better likelihood of it happening for that reason. Exactly.
Because you're warmed up to it by then, you're exposed to it. Once you've made your decision and you've gone, okay, it's only going to be $5,000, that's all you're going to pay. Every single dime you're trying to get over that is pretty much futile. But if you've introduced it up at the front, well, I do like that. That does sound interesting. It's a completely different game. So it's imperative. And it's a lot of finesse. So, not everybody can pull this off. And it's imperative that dealerships train on all the nuance here, because it takes, a certain level of sincerity. It takes a certain level of confidence. There's all these different things that apply into the process. And one of the things, I hate high pressure sales. I can't stand high pressure salespeople, douchey, pushy. Hey, which one do you want to take home today? That kind of crap. But yet, when I'm doing my training, I tell all my staff, I say, listen, guys, what I'm teaching you is high pressure sales to us, not to the customer. It's high pressure to me because it's fourth and goal, 2 seconds on the clock. I've got to get this thing in the end zone so we can tie the game to go into overtime to hopefully win it. So every time I get in contact with a customer, that's the level I'm thinking. Like, I got to make sure everything is rock and roll, ready to go, because it's that imperative. I can't slip up in any facet. I can't be insincere. I can't get caught not listening to the customer. I can't, not be happy and having fun. So it's very high pressure for me, but to the customer, it's just like some guys hanging out at the dealership going, whoa, man, what did you ride in on today? How about those Dallas Stars, dude? Can you believe what they did? They're in the playoffs this year. Woohoo! That kind of stuff. And from there, you see what happens. But you got to be on point, and it's very high pressure for the guys doing it. And if you do it, it's successful more times than not.
I'd be curious to know on, I know it's probably all over the place, but like what the math looks like, on a dealer who's a small dealer doing this, what the potential upside could be. I don't know if, how really to pose that as a question, but how do you look at that, and how could you guesstimate the opportunity?
Oh, that's a good question. And ultimately it comes down to a couple of different factors. One is product, where you'll have dealerships that are more rural centric. They sell different products that have the capacity to be sold limited amount of products. If I have, let's say in Colorado, for instance, where there's a lot of mountain riding, where people are riding dirt bikes and motorcycles, enduro type bikes up in the mountains, and there's not a lot of product. I can't sell a tire and wheel package to that guy. So, and then the typical buyer of a motocross bike or a dual sport bike is a little bit different, where we're looking at a $7,000 to $10,000 product, so the finance penetration might be less. So it ranges from area. Like, I've got clients out in Pompano Beach, Florida, who they have a very small amount of finance penetration, because when the majority of your clients walks in with a Amex Black card and slaps it down, are you going to be able to flip that guy to use your financing? And sometimes the answer is yes, but most of the time it's no. So different variables, different practices, different parts of the country all come into play there. I can tell you that, an average dealership is going to be in the $400 to $500 per copy on the back end. And some of my best dealers I'm seeing as high as $3,000 in Harley and $1,500 in the metric world. Boat and RV could be in the $4,000 range, depending on the volume that they do. So it really depends. But I can tell you it is all dependent on the process. If we have a complete concrete process in play, we're sticking to it, the numbers will be higher. And if we have a trained staff on how to overcome the black card, I'm using my credit union, I'm paying cash, those objections, when diffused at the beginning by the salesman, often lend an easier time for the business manager to come in and show them how their money is making more money in the bank than it is by using their quad cash or motorcycle money, so to speak. So if you can think about this, Brian, okay, say take a dealership that's, they're middle of the road, they're doing about 500 units a year, okay, and they're at, let's say, $400 a copy back in. Well, what would it look like? What would the numbers be if they took that $400 a copy and they raised it by, let's say another $400. So they just doubled what they normally do, but they didn't do what the best dealerships are doing. So you take like 500 units times $400, you're talking about 200 extra grand, almost a $250,000 to the bottom line, just because you implemented a process. So for the guys out there that are like, no, that's cheating my customers. No, we don't believe in doing that. Or even the guys that are too lazy to find a new source of funding, another lender to get on board, $250,000, you're not going to go after that. It's kind of crazy.
What's the percentage on your better performers, number of times that they're selling products through the F&I department? Is it better, more than half?
Right. So the best dealerships are above 65% penetration, meaning they're getting 65% of their customers to use the financing. And as you might imagine, let's say the average transaction for the finance product is, just say $4,000. How many customers are going to shell out an extra $4,000 cash to get that warranty and the maintenances, and they don't need the guaranteed asset protection? So, the reality is it's a lot smaller percentage of people that are buying that product if they're not financing. When you got somebody financing, they can just roll it in and it increases their payment $50, $75. That's easier to sell than, hey, why don't you cut me an extra $4,000 off that big fat steak there, buddy? Nobody's doing it. So honestly, when you're talking about penetration per product, it varies per, part of the country. Everybody has their own thing. Some people are big on the ceramic coating, or if you're a boat dealer, the environmental protection package for the interiors of the boat, or the electronics protection packages. So it all varies, but you're trying to get to that 50% threshold.
Do you feel like, do a lot of places do the total care packages? Because I'm trying to think of some of my better stores that I know I interact with that I know do a great job in F&I, but I don't, I've never seen, not like I would see a menu board including total care package on it, but I would think that I would know that they have that. And I guess I'm curious how many dealers.
Right. So I would say 20% or less dealers are doing this presentation to where it's, it's a benefit. It's, hey, you're pre-approved with the XYZ dealership total care package or a VIP package or whatever. But it does change the perception. And I even had a customer, I'm working in a dealership, okay, Houston, Texas. I'm sitting with the sales guy. We're doing phone calls. All of a sudden he gets a phone call. The guy's like, hey, listen, buddy, I'm standing in your competitor's dealership right now, and I got me one sweetheart of a deal. And he's talking about the number, the price of the unit. And I said, hey, listen, tell this guy we don't lose money over price, which we don't. I can't save you a trip, but I can save you some money. I had a guy just like you who was shopping from Conroe all the way to Galveston. He ended up buying from us right here in Houston because we don't lose business over price. When can you come in? The guy says, I ain't coming in unless you give me the number. And the guy says, hey, listen, dude, you're going to have to come in and sign paper anyway. Now, I can't sell you a bike over the phone, but I had a couple guys that I got set up with 3 years of all their maintenance is taken care of. Let me see what I can do for you. When can you get in here? And I swear to God, 45 minutes later, this old boy shows up in his rusty old cowboy boots and holy jeans going, all right, show me what you're talking about. I never heard nothing about no maintenances. Well, we sat them down. We did the whole thing. They came out with the total care package, and the guy bought and paid more. He paid more on the top line of the bike. And he's like, hey, that sounds good, man. Nobody ever showed me that I could get all this for this month, monthly price. And so for me, that was like, I'll take the big W there, because if you can get a guy who's in another dealership to come in just basically off of the total care package, nobody's doing it. Nobody is using that as a tool to get people to come in.
Thanks again for listening to this lost tape of the Dealership Fix It podcast. These guest interviews still hit hard, and we're bringing them back re-edited, sharpened up, and focused entirely on what matters, helping dealerships like yours improve, grow, and win. If you got something out of this one, hit that share button or forward it to a dealership friend who needs it. And make sure you're following the show so we can keep bringing you more content like this with convos with people shaping the power sports industry. Catch you on the next one.
Still guessing what to pay on a used bike? Still holding aged units that just won't move? It's time for a real system. Moto Hunt's ultimate used inventory playbook shows how the best dealers are finding better inventory, pricing trades right, and turning used bikes faster with fewer mistakes and more margin. It's short, real, and free to download right now. Visit dealers.motohunt.com to grab your copy or check for the link in the notes.